When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, 2x2. User, allangle2 teen. Posted, March 3rd, 1997.
There's no two ways about it. What I'm about to say here is gonna make it sound like I've lost my mind. Maybe I have, who knows? It all started a week ago after I got back from my vacation in the Poconos. I know that sounds very 80s, but my ex-wife Heather and I went there on our honeymoon and I fell in love with it. In fact, if Heather and I had stayed as in love with each other as I still am with the hot wings at the old Rangers Inn in Greentown, we'd never have gotten divorced. The first indication of something being off came when I was waiting to board my flight home. I was pretzeled into one of those terrible airport seats, solving a crossword puzzle when the gate agent called my name over the loudspeaker. Will a Mr. Goggin please come to the ticket desk? I sighed. My last name is Geegan, and it's the bane of every single person who has to read it out loud. Teachers, telephone operators, the priest who married me and Heather, and now this poor air train representative. I stuffed my crossword book into the pocket of my coat and walked up to the kiosk. The girl behind the counter was in her early 20s, slim and blandly pretty. I could tell she was dreading having to repeat my name and spared her the trouble. I'm Dave Geegan. What's the problem? She smiled as broadly as she could. Hi, Mr. Geegan. Thank you for coming up so quickly. We need to verify your identification. May I see your driver's license? I pulled out my wallet and placed it in front of her, open to my ID. She leaned over it, frowning. Thank you, mister. Thank you very much. It seems like there may be some kind of mistake here. Did you intentionally book 2 seats on this flight? The notion was so silly I waited a couple beats because I assumed there was a punchline coming. When her earnest look of confusion broadened, I recognized she was really looking for an answer. No, of course not. I can't imagine why I would. Why? She chewed her lower lip pensively. That's the thing, Mr. I sighed again. Heather used to call it the trademark Geegan sigh. It's Geegan, like Geegan. Right, that's the thing, Mr. Geegan. You have 2 reservations here. One for seat 14A and one for seat 14C. This was a new one. Had I gotten so locked into the whole Poconos routine that I booked another seat for Heather without thinking about it? It wasn't likely, but how the hell else had it happened? I don't remember making 2 reservations, and no one mentioned this when I checked in. Can you tell me from here whether I was charged for both? She shook her head. No, sir. I could call our reservation line and ask, but your flight would leave before I got an answer. Your best bet is to check your credit card statement when it comes, then call us if you need to. All my booking receipts were at home in the filing cabinet, so I'd be able to find out long before the bill got there, but she didn't need to know that. Okay, will do. Thank you for checking. Another too broad smile. You're very welcome, Mr. Geegan. Have a lovely flight. It was a lovely flight, or as lovely as hurtling through the sky in a metal tube traveling 500 miles per hour can be. Even better was collecting my luggage, getting back to my car in the long-term lot, and getting home before rush hour traffic snarled up the highway like an old man's prostate. After the ticket snafu, my welcome mat was the next horseman of whatever is happening in my life. The mat was a housewarming gift from someone in Heather's extended family. White gray when it was gifted, time had worn it down to the color of a particularly unloved stretch of sidewalk. Small wonder, then, that she left it behind. I had set my suitcase down on the porch and was fishing for my keys when I realized something under my feet felt off. Too soft, just a little wobbly. I looked down and saw that I was standing on 2 welcome mats rather than 1. I stepped back and kneeled to get a little closer. Yep, I'd been right. Where there had been 1 welcome mat, there were now 2. I peeled the top one back with its familiar ground-in patterns of grit to find the second one looked exactly like it, and I mean exactly. 10 minutes of flipping back and forth between the 2 was enough to convince me they were identical, meaning whoever was responsible for the prank would have had to invest a near maniacal level of time to pull it off. What the hell was going on? I half expected the candid camera crew to pop out. Instead, all I got was an autumn breeze. I tossed the top mat into the far corner of my porch, kicked the original, or at least the other one, back into its spot and let myself in. Every night before I go to sleep in my own bed, I have a ritual. After I put on my pajamas, I go back downstairs and heat some milk up on the stove. Another holdover from my life with Heather. Sometimes, as I waited for the milk to start bubbling, I wondered if she still did this too. As always, the milk started boiling just before those thoughts carried me too far away. The warm milk ritual involves looking out the front room window while you drink it. Well, it used to involve sitting in the big bay window we've added at Heather's suggestion, though I still haven't worked back up to that. Standing feels good, like being close enough to a party to hear the music without the social anxiety of not knowing what to say. Traffic on the Beltway was light that night. Headlights twinkling like diamonds in the cold night air. It was hypnotic enough I at first took the smell of overheating milk to be a sort of olfactory hallucination. The smoke detector disabused me of that notion real fast, and I raced into the kitchen to find another pot on the stove. The milk inside boiled away to nothing. I cursed, turning off the burner and wrapping a towel around the pot handle to get it away from the heat. The obvious question, how the hell did I leave this burning, was cut off mid-thought. The pot I'd used and taken off the heat was still there on the range. This was a second, unrelated, but yes, identical pot I didn't even know I had. Fear ran through me. If I hadn't put this on, who had? Was it the same person who pranked me with the welcome mats? I'm going to level with you here. I don't have any friends, and my coworkers aren't exactly funny people. The only possible suspects were Heather or her new man. And as much as I'd like to think I still occupied that much real estate in her head, they'd moved to Branson, Missouri after they got married, and it's a long way to travel for a gag. I wheeled around the kitchen, again waiting for something to happen. Candid camera, a stabbing, anything. Nothing did. Distantly, I heard the rush of traffic on the Beltway and the buzz of the refrigerator. Every door and window in the house was locked, so I was again left with an insane mystery. Second of the day. I puzzled over them all night instead of sleeping. The morning didn't improve the situation. Sitting next to my coffee mug in the dish rack was its exact duplicate, and the same thing has been happening all week. I'd faxed documents over to our Boise office only to find out they'd come through twice, or I'd already sent them earlier in the day. Yesterday, Thursday, I reached into my closet for a pullover and pulled out what had to be a cashmere sweater I had no recollection of buying. The strangeness that had been bubbling up around me all week was coming to a head, and I tore through that closet, finding it full of not only my own clothes, but duplicates, except the imposter items were of much higher quality. There were labels from stores I'd never even heard of, let alone been to. This was too much. Whoever was trying to screw with me had spent what looked like thousands of dollars to do so, and I still had no idea why. I felt feverish, furious in a way I'd never been. Even when Heather had asked for the divorce, I hadn't felt this sense of alienation and rage. I picked up one of the ceramic dogs she'd left behind for me. I'd asked and pitched it into the mirror above our dresser. Fuck this. I put on my own clothes and left for work. Instead of coming home, once I clocked out of the office, I went and tied one on. Whatever was happening, I didn't want to deal with it anymore. I wanted to drown it in Johnny Walker. It's not a great thought, and I don't know exactly when, but I'm pretty sure I drove home that night. All I know for sure is I woke up this morning feeling like Gallagher had given the melons a night off and used my head instead. The room spun around me, threatening to bring up whatever fast food I'd eaten on my way home. I gripped the bed frame, trying to will the world to stay in one place, and eventually I did. That's when I saw 10:30 on my alarm clock. I was 2.5 hours late for work. Pulling myself to my feet, I stumbled into the kitchen, my head still pounding. I picked up the phone and dialed work. Had anyone seen me out last night? Would they believe me if I said I was sick? Someone answered, cutting off my thought process. It was Cindy, the receptionist. "Hey, Cindy, it's Dave Geegan. Can you put me through to Randy?" "Dave?" She sounded confused. "No problem. Here you go, Randy. It's..." A click, and Randy's voice came on the line. Randy was my manager, one of those National Guard weekend warrior types who liked to talk about the office as if it was a militia and he was our general. "Dave, what's up?" I hadn't had time to decide whether I wanted to play it tough, so I had to wing it. "Hey, Randy, I'm really sorry, but I think I got a bug or something because I feel like hell. I must have slept right through my alarm." Randy snorted. He sounded annoyed. "Dave, I'm not in the mood for jokes and don't have time for them." "I'm not kidding, Randy. I really did sleep through my alarm. I can try to..." He cut me off. "It wasn't funny the first time, David, and it's still not now. Get back to work." He hung up the phone hard enough it made my ear ring. What the hell was he talking about? I redialed the office number. Cindy picked up again on the first ring. "Cindy, it's Dave again. I don't think Randy was listening." It was her turn to cut me off. "Dave, Randy is mad. I don't know what you said to him, but you should probably avoid him for the rest of the day." I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. Was there a gas leak in the office or something? "Cindy, I'm not coming in today. I think I've got a bug or something. I slept through my alarm." Silence. "Cindy? Dave, what do you mean?" "What do you mean, what do I mean?" "You're at work. Half an hour ago, you were at my desk dropping off these flowers. If you..." She dropped her voice to a whisper. "If you changed your mind about going out for that drink tonight, this is a fucked up way to tell me." I didn't know what to say. "Did you?" Cindy demanded. "No," I said dully. "No, I'm just goofing. Sorry, bad joke." I hung up the phone before she could respond. Back in college, my favorite novelist had been Kurt Vonnegut. My favorite novel, Mother Night. It tells the story of Howard Campbell, a man who was a spy for both the Germans and the Americans, and somewhere between the two, he loses track of who he actually is. I remember one of my professors writing Vonnegut's summary of the book's themes on a chalkboard. "We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be." Standing there in a kitchen I now understood no longer belonged to me, I realized I had spent so long pretending to be nothing that that's exactly what I became. Now, someone else had taken the reins of my life, and from the sound of it, was already doing a better job. That was this morning, and I'm writing this just after lunch. I want to be gone by the time he comes home. Like Howard Campbell, I have nothing waiting for me in any particular direction, but I can't stay here.
Subject, too hot for TV. User, xshowbzz. Posted, June 1st, 1997.
TV is a rough business. I knew that going in. I accepted that if I wanted to be at the top, I'd have to push hard, work constantly, and maybe step on some heads along the way. All of which I was more than happy to do since it got me where I wanted to be. While the show I work for may not be the best, it is unquestionably the most popular on the air right now. You know the one. Chairs get thrown, wigs get snatched, everyone shouts the big man's name. We're like the Rumpelstiltskins of daytime, taking the worst people in the world and spinning them into TV gold. Every line we cross, there's a critic saying it's one too far, and yet the next week, there we are, taking the ball into end zones those fucking nerds never even imagined. All that spilled ink and hand-wringing, and yet they'll never know about the time we actually crossed a real line. We have this thing with guests where we like to say we bring them in a limousine and send them home on the bus. You say it's harsh, I say it's no worse than those cows in Japan who get massaged before the bolt gun comes out. We meet them at the airport in a literal stretch limo, stocked with just enough champagne to keep them on a low boil. They get in, they dive into the bubbly head first, and get ready to face the nation. Every single guest has gone along with it, except for Andrew. There's not a single one of the bookers who will admit to finding Andrew or Hal. People will send us tapes, so that may have been it, though if it was, that tape and Andrew are long gone. From what I remember, he was some college professor who had been fired for publishing crackpot theories about magical mathematics. Whatever you want to call it, he was a numbers guy who claimed his equations could open doors into other universes, which is exactly the kind of bullshit you want on your Halloween slate. The plan was to package him together with a goth kid who said she wanted to marry Satan, a match made in hell, right? The whole thing was shaky from the jump. Usually in the run-up to taping, we'll get in touch with the guest to hammer out a basic storyline. Yeah, I know. You thought it was real, and it is, in a professional wrestling way, with pulled punches and sometimes just a little real blood. Andrew kept blowing us off, though, telling us what he had to show us wasn't some dog and pony show. We should have known better. I should have known better, but the image of some kook calculating his way to the devil on stage was too good to pass up. Every single guest we've had on this show who's come from out of state has jumped at the offer of a free flight to Chicago. Andrew, on the other hand, insisted he would rather drive from his home in Indiana. He never did say exactly where, just Indiana. The morning he got there, my assistant Randy let me know he had arrived, declining both the hotel and meal vouchers. Write this down because it's good life advice. Only 4 real crazy people turned down free food. I decided it was time to meet him. The green room at the studio isn't huge. If anything, it's small for a show of our size. Still, somehow, with Andrew in it, it looked like an airplane hangar. He wasn't an overly small man, not really. It was more he had this thing where it felt like the world wanted to pull away from him. His clothes were about what I'd expect from an unemployed academic. Loose plaid shirt, slightly too long khakis. He was pale, too pale for TV, but the makeup people could fix that. Unfortunately for him, there was nothing anyone could do about his handshake, which was loose and damp enough I had to resist wiping my hands off in front of him. If I'd passed him on the street, I probably wouldn't have given him a second thought, and yet after a few minutes of explaining how the morning taping was going to go, I realized the goth kid had been in the room the whole time without me noticing. She was understandably reluctant to talk to Andrew, and I couldn't blame her. Interacting with him felt like the human equivalent of scooping the stuff at the bottom of your sink. On TV, that's not necessarily a disqualifying quality, so I figured the big man would be able to get something worthwhile out of him. I didn't want to have to deal with him, though, so I excused myself and called an associate producer to finish prep. I was on my way out when Steve, our head of security, took me aside. Steve is a moose of a man. Through everything we've done on this show, I'd never seemed rattled until that moment. He nodded toward the green room door. I don't like this, Maggie. I don't like him. He weighs $1.25, Steve. You'll be fine. Before I could walk away, his big hand clamped down on my shoulder. It's not like that. There's something wrong with him. I tugged myself out of his grip. Steve, if there wasn't something wrong with him, he wouldn't belong on TV. When the taping started, I was standing at the monitor and might have been the first person to see the wiggle. No matter which camera was on him, a vertical line of distortion ran the length of the frame. We stopped and started a few times to check the cabling. Nada. Even without the technical hiccups, he was a dud. The goth kid actually did a good job of throwing softballs, and Andrew whiffed on each one. Every word out of his mouth was about strings or patterns or something he called black geometry, and the audience didn't give a single shit. Big Man was the one who finally cracked the code. For better or worse, he's such an old hand at this game. He knows what the audience wants before they do, and I watched in real time as it dawned on him that this crowd wanted to jump on the sweaty little nerd. He changed tack immediately, making his stern face. Andrew, have you ever actually used this key of yours? Have you seen these other worlds? Andrew looked shocked at the suggestion. Of course not. Who knows what could happen? I can feel an intelligence on the other side. It knows the work I'm doing. Whenever I've come close to completing the equation, it gets excited, like an animal scratching at the door wanting to be let out. The big man smirked. So you're telling me you're standing at the precipice of an unheard-of scientific breakthrough, you just don't want to make it? I can't, Andrew stuttered. That's what I've been trying to tell you, all of you. I know what I know is true, just not what to do with it. What that sounds like to me, Andrew, is that you have a girlfriend, we just don't know her because she lives in Canada. The audience laughed uproariously. This was familiar ground. They smelled blood in the water. Andrew looked stricken. Despite the makeup department's best effort, he looked paler than the whiteboard we'd put next to his chair. Well, Andrew, I don't believe you have a girlfriend in Canada, and I don't think our audience does either. What do you think, audience? Do you believe him? As one, they shouted no. Big Man went to a woman in the third row, Yvonne, a thick-necked regular with a voice like an air raid siren. You know what I think, Mr. Devilmath? I think you made all this nonsense up because you can't get no ladies. Crowd whooped. And it ain't working, honey. Even Bride of Frankenstein up there don't want none of what you got going on. The goth kid took the ball and ran with it, shouting back at Yvonne, who gave as good as she got. The cameras swooped away from Andrew to focus on the chicken fight. Steve did his thing, getting between the two wildcats, giving them a solid object to push against so the folks at home would really believe they wanted each other's blood. I was so happy at the way Big Man had managed to right the ship, I completely lost track of Andrew. In the middle of the almost brawl, every member of the crew who was wearing headphones suddenly ripped them off and threw them to the ground. Picking up the pieces in the days to come, they all said it sounded like a dentist drill coming toward them. quiet at first, growing in intensity until it felt like their eardrums were going to burst. I don't remember who was the first person to see what was happening on stage. Once they began, the screams were like a chorus rising in desperation as each audience member's reaction cued the person next to them all the way down the line until every person was watching. What were they watching? Andrew, frantically writing on the blackboard at the end of a long hallway where the stage had once been. Or rather, I should say he was standing exactly where he'd been the whole show, only it now seemed both close and far away at the same time, forcing your eyes into a tug of war with your brain. Reality stretched and pulled in front of us as numbers, then symbols spun out of a Sharpie, written not so much on the board as inside it, changing it from within. The seesaw between our half of the room and Andrew's was now weighted completely towards him, its gravity pulling him into the distance until he was a pinpoint on a miniature horizon. Large sections of the audience began to vomit, their brains unable to reconcile the dissonant halves of reality unfolding before them. We'd find out afterward, several of them had suffered fatal strokes in their seats. At last, the dot that had been Andrew stopped moving. For a second, there was silence. Then he vanished into an expanding black void which raced toward us with the sound of a tearing wound. A wave of fetid air rushed ahead of the hole through which I saw only a single monstrous eye looking at us curiously. This must have been the door it meant, now wide open and racing toward us. With a final, deafening, guttural burst, it arrived, and I closed my eyes, waiting to die. Or worse, all around me, glass shattered, camera lenses, monitors, lights, their remains arcing through the air until the audience's unprotected bodies were speckled with tiny, bloody cuts. After the blast, everything went silent except for sobs from the crowd. Big Man, he was crying too. I opened my eyes to find Andrew and his whiteboard gone. The rest of the stage, darkened as it was and sprinkled with broken glass, was intact. We never saw Andrew again. The hatchback he'd left parked in the lot downstairs was quietly left in the long-term lot at O'Hare. For all I know, it's still there. Whatever happened on that stage fried every single piece of electronics on the floor, including a few pacemakers. The tape we had managed to record before everything went sideways was useless, completely degaussed, as was every other tape one floor above and below. It's a fucking miracle we moved our archive off-site the year before this happened. It took a week, but we got the studio back to rights. Believe it or not, we had an easier time shutting up the audience. Some of the regulars wouldn't even take cash. All they wanted was guaranteed entry to our tapings in perpetuity. Goes to show you that there are some kinds of fans you can't buy. The best episode of the most popular show on TV never made it to air, but that's showbiz. People can't miss something they don't know existed in the first place. The people who were there know, of course, even if we never talk about it. Sometimes I wonder if they think about that eye as much as I do. See it from the corner of their eye, and reflections on glass, and the blank faces of strangers on the L, in their dreams.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.